Good afternoon, everyone. That's my hype table over there. They did a great job. My name is Samantha Tavares. I am a special project administrator for the City of Phoenix in Arizona, and I am president-elect for the LGHN board. Ray wanted to give me a little test. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Ray told me before I move over to take the reins from him, I got to do lunch. I got to do the intro. So I said, all right, that sounds good. So we'll see how I do at the end of it. The first thing we're going to do, we wouldn't be here today without our lovely sponsors. So many thanks again to our diamond sponsors of United Healthcare, Mission Square Retirement, our platinum sponsors, management partners, strategic government resources, our gold sponsors, Adams County, Colorado, City of Aurora, Colorado, silver sponsor, Amazon, our bronze sponsors, GovHR USA, Denver International Airport, Xcel Energy, the City of Austin, and then we have our contributors, City of Brighton, Colorado, Brighton Economic Development Corporation, Visit Aurora, National Forum for Black Public Administrators, and Austin Energy. Let's give a round of applause for our sponsors once again. All right. Who here loves coffee? Goes to Starbucks, or if you're local government, you shop local, right? We go to our little coffee shops. All right. I'm a coffee lover. So one day, my family was like, look, we're having a bunch of people over on a Saturday. Sam, go get coffee. Starbucks is down the road. Put the order in. Mobile order, of course, you know, I'm a youngin', I like to do that. I haven't been in Starbucks in quite some time in the actual store. So I go in, get the coffee. It's a 5-cup order. So I have my wonderful tray. I come in, grab my name. I'm walking out. I go and I grab the handle. It's a handle on Starbucks doors if you haven't been in there. And I pull towards myself. And I pull towards myself again in frustration because the dang handle is not a pull handle, it's a push handle. And our entire lives, people, to get out of buildings, we have push bars to push out of buildings. And I have no idea when Starbucks changed and decided to trick us and have a pull handle. It's not what I learned, right, as a human. I'm not conditioned that way. I was really frustrated until I pushed out and I left, all right? I feel that way sometimes in my job when I'm giving a program that I feel, why are we doing this? This is not natural to serve our residents this way. Or when I hear legislation being passed and I'm like, who thought of that? That is not natural to do that in our community, or it's not efficient to provide services that way. I feel exactly the same way I felt in Starbucks that day, frustrated because that's not making our lives easier, because many people will be pulling that door in Starbucks, and I'm sure you've been one of them, or you've seen people do that in other buildings. It's really strange. And I think it's something that we greatly share in common with our next speaker today, someone who really tries to change things of the past that don't really work with today's society, or really thinks carefully to ensure that proper legislation or other things, other programs to serve our community are actually very efficient for them. So, Mario Treto Jr. serves as the Secretary of the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. He is a prominent advocate, attorney, and government official based in Chicago. And previously, the governor appointed him to his cabinet as the Director of the Division of Real Estate for the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. He knows his numbers. I'm sure he'd be great to talk about the great market that we have today. And in this role, he is the head regulator for the state of Illinois' real estate industry, overseeing professional education, licensure, regulation, and discipline for nearly 100,000 real estate licenses. And before this role, he served as the deputy city attorney for Evanston, Illinois. The son of Mexican immigrants, something I think all of us can relate to as well, and the first to receive a high school education, he mentors Latinx and LGBTQ youth interested in government and nonprofit careers, and supports several civic and charitable causes. He's the youngest and first Latinx board chair for Howard Brown Health, the Midwest's largest LGBTQ organization and federally qualified health center serving over 40,000 patients. Let's give it up for our Mario Treto Jr.
Thank you for the warm introduction, Sam. I was nervous about how Starbucks was going to be connected to me other than the fact that I get a cold brew every morning. But that was a good connection. That was really great. ¿Cómo se encuentran todos? ¿Bien? It's very exciting, and honestly, I had to do that because this is the first opportunity in any public speaking and engagement where I'm able to feel like I'm with family. Feel that I can speak in Spanish and everyone knows the idea of where I'm going towards, and so that's very exciting, and thank you for having me here today. As you heard, my name is Mario Treto Jr. I'm the Secretary of the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. It's a very long title where we oversee and regulate professional licensure, so of over 140 different professions, 1.2 million licensees. So that's doctors, nurses, cosmetologists, real estate brokers, and the like. But then we also oversee the regulation and licensure of financial institutions like state-chartered banks, credit unions, and other financial service providers. Prior to that role, I was the Deputy City Attorney for Evanston, Illinois, a community with 75,000, and that borders the northern border of Chicago, Illinois. And long before that, I was in high school the best party balloon bouquet arranger at the local party city in Melrose Park, Illinois. But I say that because it's honestly the first workplace where I really received customer service skills that proved to help me out every step of the way, including now. Because that's what we all ultimately are doing. We're customer service representatives for our respective local, state, and federal governments. I'm honored to speak with you here today. The local government Hispanic network's efforts are really very important. I think it's important for us to be able to connect with one another and to be able to share our lived experiences. Knowing what works and what doesn't work in one municipality, I know that before this, and I know that I'll have more context after this, where we can share some of those experiences again. Connecting, networking, and learning from one another helps us further those local government services so that we can continue to help our growing Hispanic community. I know that I'm preaching to the choir. Our United States Hispanic population reached a record 60.6 million in 2019, up 930,000 over the previous year, and that's from 50.7 million in 2010 from the U.S. Census Bureau. We're here to stay. Along with the unique cultures interwoven in the fabric that is being Latino, so too are the unique needs of the Latino community. As we continue to navigate through the pandemic, it became all too clear that minority populations were being disproportionately impacted. In fact, Hispanics and Latinos are 1.7 times more likely to contract COVID-19 than their non-Hispanic counterparts, 4.1 times more likely to be hospitalized, and 2.8 times more likely to die from COVID. Sadly, our community also has the highest rates of any racial ethnic group in the United States of uninsurance, which compounds health disparities. Furthermore, Hispanics and Latinos, along with other communities of color, have also been disproportionately harmed by the economic fallout. They accounted for 23% of the initial job loss due to the pandemic, while making up 16% of the population. Hispanics or Latino Americans represent a higher share of job losses with unemployment rates of 8.6% compared to 5.7% of their white counterparts. These statistics are too shocking, and again, we know them all too well. This means that government needs to establish meaningful ways to collect and act on community input. The employment of Hispanics and Latinos in the government workforce is imperative. Our communities need and deserve tailored services and tailored outreach to meet the disproportionate health and economic disparities that our communities face. During the pandemic, we saw public servants quickly become essential workers. Think about it. Local, state, and national agencies and departments were working with departments of health with other local, state, and national entities. Housing stability is something that many of you have spoken about before. Housing stability wasn't so stable. Unemployment numbers were rising. Businesses were feeling deep impacts, many that closing up shop forever. Government stepped in to continue to provide safety net services and create innovative programs to help those that are facing unprecedented problems. Whether it was also informing our Latino community of the benefits of getting vaccinated, helping the local Mexican bakery from closing, ensuring that there was compliance with the mandates and the governor executive orders, we saw municipalities step up to the plate in a number of different ways. We've also seen national trends focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that work has really been substantially helpful in the current day. The lived experience of Latinos in the United States and cultural competency needed to successfully conduct education and outreach efforts during the pandemic were critical, again, to government agencies. However, before I share some actionable items as we navigate the new normal, I think it's important to begin at the beginning of my lived experiences and my professional career path, and I know that many of you will probably relate to some of these. The true story begins with my parents, Mario and Rebecca Treto. Both of my parents were born in very small villages in Mexico in the state of Zacatecas. Both came from very modest means, but an incredible ambition and incredible drive, and an eagerness to live a fuller and better life. Both parents met in elementary school, and their schooling stopped at the 6th grade because they needed to be able to work for the family. There were financial constraints. My father shares a number of different stories, and one of the ones that really makes an impact on me is that he slept on a dirt bed all of his life while he was living in Mexico because that's all he could afford. And I get emotional when I think about that because I'm very fortunate and blessed to be in the position that I am today because of that work that he's done. My father came to the United States at the age of 16 in pursuit of a better life, where he worked as a migrant farm worker in the Southwest. He also worked as a farm worker here in Colorado, so it's exciting to be here in the state. And then he moved to Chicago, where he worked in a factory and continued his life journey, where he brought my mother from Mexico to this Latino community called La Villita in Chicago, if any of you know where that is. It's a vibrant Mexican-American community that has a lot of options, a lot of things to explore. I have many incredible memories of my childhood, and I think about that. And as I was writing this speech, I was thinking about all of these things and how, as a state regulator and a deputy city attorney, I probably would advise against all of this now. But I remember the hot summer days where we used the fire hydrants as cooling mechanisms. So I'm sorry, City of Chicago. We also walked down the streets and went to the neighborhood stores and grabbed some of that delicious Mexican candy. Memories where, Find My Friends on your phone. That was obsolete at the time because you knew exactly where all of your friends were because you would look at the front yard and wherever the bikes were piled up, that's where everyone was. So it was exciting to kind of be living in those times and a really fortunate childhood. But then I also have other memories that I think we can also relate with. Memories were of myself with my parents walking into government offices and serving as the sole translator for my family. Whether it was paying bills or figuring out that you actually needed a building permit to build something on your property, which was something completely foreign to my parents. To this day, I think in Mexico, they just build structures and sheds, and that is a no-go if you know land use and zoning laws. A lot of different things, memories of myself sitting down with my parents at the kitchen table, and being in elementary school and figuring out how to fill out their taxes without being a CPA myself at the time, So there's a lot. But these were all things that were necessities, things that our parents had to do and our grandparents had to do to survive and to make it here in America. These stories are far from unique. I actually often use them as conversation starters when I'm surrounded by other Latino professionals, and where we can see how much more we have in common other than the business attire that we're wearing. Getting deeper into conversation, I also start to find out that a lot of those experiences really shaped academic and professional careers, really igniting that inner flame that we have to help one another, especially our Latino family. I encourage you actually to share some personal stories if you haven't already during this conference with someone that you haven't met before, and you'll be surprised by the pleasant conversation that you'll have. I quickly learned in high school that I had a strong affinity for academics. The high school I went to didn't have a high college matriculation rate, let alone a college retention rate or graduation rate. I was thankfully taken under the wings of a number of different teachers who mentored me throughout the college admissions process. It was challenging as a first-generation high school student, particularly to explain to my parents something that was so new, so foreign to them. They were scared, quite frankly. There were times where I would have to include these teachers in the conversations with my parents because I needed backup. And I'm sure you all know that, if you go and mention things to your parents, they often think there's an ulterior motive for you wanting to, go to a school that's 5 hours away. But really, it was the desire to attend a school that would have prepared me and challenged me in a way that I wanted at the time. These teachers explained the difference between a 2-year community college down the road versus a 4-year academic institution. So it took a couple of years, my junior and senior year, for these conversations to happen and for my parents to finally digest that this is what our son wants to do. I was the oldest son out of 3 with my parents. Both of my parents were one of 7. And on my father's side, I was the oldest grandchild, so there was a lot of focus on what I was going to be doing next, because I was the product of the person that was chasing the American dream here in the United States. So thankfully, they came on board finally, and I was able to begin my journey at the university. Again, that was very rigorous. Challenges immediately presented themselves at the time during my freshman year. The university had less than a 2% Latino population, and it also is known because it had the least socioeconomic diversity in the country. It awards the least amount of Pell Grants. So needless to say, I stood out a lot. I'll never forget one of the first conversations I had with one of my classmates my first week when I got there, and he asked me where I came from and how I got into the school. He made me know that I was the first Latino he encountered that wasn't a lawn keeper or working at his grocery store. "You're a pretty good guy for being Mexican," he says. Words that I let slide off at the time, but words that now, especially as I was writing the speech, just had such a hurtful impact. It was difficult because that's where I realized that my Mexicanness, something that I once celebrated, that I loved the culture and the colorfulness that we have in the community, was now something that was becoming something that I was being ashamed of, and that was concerning to me. That first year was challenging. I had a number of different conversations with the dean of my high school, who really encouraged me to stay put and to work through things. I was thinking of potentially dropping out or attending another university, but I also didn't want to become another failed statistic of my high school. So it was this balanced pressure that I was feeling while I was there. I worked hard and started to make friends with a number of different people at the university, individuals who had a lot of different life experiences that we were able to connect. At first, I didn't think that there was much connection, but now I look back and again fondly remembering all the different people that I connected with. The Jewish girl from Connecticut, the country club soccer player from Louisville, Kentucky. We started to form a small group. And myself, the LGBT Latino first generation student, started to make connections and learn about different cultures and different individuals and different upbringings in a really exciting way. The sharing of humanity was important, and it was something that no class in a university could ever teach me. What I quickly found out that this was my first class in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the School of Life. I started to I started my conversation with you all by highlighting the disproportionate impacts of COVID-19 and how it's had a far negative impact on minority populations. However, COVID-19 has also been an opportunity for us to reevaluate how we have been working through things, what the status quo looks like, and what that's been for a number of years. I tell my staff, as cliche as it sounds, 2020 really was a year of clear vision. It was a year of reflection. 2021 and beyond, it's now our year of actions. Let's take the tools and the skills and the lessons that we've learned and put them into practice as we move forward. Each of you can probably share countless stories about how you had to quickly adapt, sometimes at a minute's notice after the city manager, the county administrator, anyone, whoever's leading your particular municipality, brought issues at the forefront to you. As I've had the opportunity again to sit down and reflect on those past few years, there are a lot of takeaways that I have. 3 that I've synthesized that I'd like to share with all of you that we need to consider as Hispanic professionals as we move forward in our professional careers. First, continue to find ways to have a seat at the decision-making table. I know that many of us have had that seat, and it's been quite a challenge, and we've all had obstacles that we've had to face. And once you have those seats, make sure that you're really adequately hearing those voices of all the people that are around you, especially those that have different life experiences, that come from different backgrounds, because that's how we really move the needle forward together. And then some of you will have the honor, if not all of you, to be at the head of the table one day. And sometimes people think that you have a limited amount of spots at that table. I encourage you to build a bigger table and keep bringing people on. That's particularly important, again, to get those very diverse life experiences. It's important to do this because this is how we cultivate leadership with one another, and I can speak from experience that that is certainly what happened with me, with a lot of different Latino, LGBT professionals, attorneys that have helped me throughout my career path. Carefully listen to one another, be willing to revisit and reinvent past practices, and don't be afraid, again, to disrupt the status quo. We're being reminded daily on the news that what has been happening before just isn't working anymore. In Evanston, in the city of Evanston, I worked with city officials and elected individuals and the city manager to advance initiatives that really helped minority populations in the city. Some examples included working with restorative justice efforts related to the historical housing discrimination that certain minority groups faced. We've also worked with the expungement of juvenile offenses that are disproportionately affecting minorities. As the Secretary of the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, I'm very proud that we were able to increase scholarships for minorities so that we have a workforce that's reflective of the diversity of the state of Illinois. Really finding the tools that are already existing and finding ways to expand upon them is really critically important. We've also made sure that, and I'm sure that many of you have done this already, but making sure that you're disseminating information in multiple languages just so that you can do the maximum amount of education and outreach. We had a lot of documents when I stepped into this role in just simply English, and now we see the importance of having Spanish-speaking real estate professionals, for example, that know what the concerns might be of our culture. And we do that by looking at the pipeline and starting from the beginning. And again, that is by finding ways to get individuals into the profession, but also working with high schools and middle schools and elementary schools to ensure that students are aware that these opportunities are there for them. This is particularly important for us as a mission-driven agency that's really focused on consumer protections. I think it's also important for us to keep an open mind and remain flexible in our plans. We can all relate with the pandemic and how that's completely changed how we've set our strategic plans, our goals, and our day-to-day functions. I actually wanted to take the opportunity to share a very personal story, and this is the first time that I'm sharing it. I had written a speech before, and then I kind of crossed this out and started to speak a bit from the heart because it was something that was very impactful for me in the last month. in that lesson that I learned that it's the importance of expecting the unexpected, but I also learned a much deeper life lesson from this the story that I'm about to share. In my current role, I oversee the regulation of cannabis dispensaries, and I know that I'm in Colorado, which is, I think, they've paved the way for a number of us to be able to understand how to move forward with that particular goal. Um, but um, but it was an exciting process. It's been a hot topic again in many states, and with respect to the state of Illinois, Illinois was trying to have an equity-centric cannabis model. So the Illinois legislature created a limited number of licenses that were, again, focused on an equitable allotment that focused on points and then a subsequent lottery system. Given the public visibility of the process, I worked very hard with my team to ensure that that lottery was a success. As the head of the agency, I wanted to oversee each process and be a part of it, be a part of each day's occurrences. So in Illinois, we have 2 state offices. We have one in Chicago, Illinois, and then we have the capital, which is actually Springfield, Illinois, and it's, I'd say, like a 3.5 hour drive south. You go on Interstate 55. And I'm based off in Chicago, but for that particular endeavor, I had to drive down to Springfield. As I was a couple of hours into the trip, I was in a stagnant construction zone in a single lane approaching a bridge. Without warning, a semi-truck rear-ended my vehicle as it was going at a dangerously high speed, resulting in a completely destroyed vehicle and personal injuries from the spinning and collision and bouncing back and forth from this bridge. The semi-truck actually flipped over the bridge, and I hope it's an image that no one has to witness. The day's itinerary was not going according to plan, but it was at that moment that I realized that I needed to take a step back sometimes, and we all need to let the unexpected occur and be flexible with our plans in ways that we think plans might be inflexible. There are things outside of our control that sometimes throw wrenches in our plans, and that's okay. Sometimes those unexpected occurrences prepare us for greater things in the future. Sometimes the way those things impact our lives aren't known until years from now, decades from now. Sometimes we never fully know, and that's okay. My mother says I have a second chance at life. I think I have a reinvigorated calling in life, but I agree with her as well. I would never disagree with my mother. The desire to continue to effectuate that positive change in a world in whatever way I can is at the forefront of my mind now. I encourage each and every one of you to think about how you're living your day and look at your respective callings and see how you can continue to help the most marginalized, the underserved, those without adequate resources. And translate that passion into your everyday job, no matter at what level you make it, whether it's local, state, or federal. I didn't write this on the speech, but if you care to know, my team at the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation properly executed the whole lottery program. And it was exciting to see when you have a great staff, a great team, move a lot of initiatives forward without you having to be present. And that's a sign of a strong team. And I know that some of them are watching, so I have to thank them as well. I thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I've had a number of different life experiences. I was also, as mentioned earlier, the chair of Howard Brown Health, which is a federally qualified health center in Chicago, serving 40,000 patients. And that's really working with the underserved. And during my tenure, we saw double the expansion of clinics. We now have 12 clinics. And they're actually in communities that are black and brown. And so we were able to expand in those communities as well. I mention that because your passions don't only have to be in your 9 to 5. You can also do it in your nonprofit work. Whatever you're doing after your 9 to 5, take that opportunity to express that passion. And again, that inner drive, inner desire that you have to effectuate that positive change with individuals. Many strides have been made. We've been able to accomplish a lot. We have a lot of work to do, though. So with that, I encourage you all to roll up your sleeves. I know that that's something that I always love to share with my team, And I want to make sure that we do it juntos, and I know that we'll be able to do that. So that's a little bit of my life experiences, a little bit of my professional growth opportunities, and some of the things that I've faced. One of the pleasures really was working as a municipal attorney. I know that many of you probably have strong connections with your municipal, city, county attorneys. It was not a fun job because it was a lot of, we were the ones that broke down the fun. We were the ones that would constantly say no, but trust me, I always tried in Evanston to make things work. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have, or if you have a particular story that you'd like to share with the group, I'd love to hear those as well. And I'll also be around too if there aren't any questions. Happy to answer any of those as well. Okay.
Wanted to ask about your path, your journey. How did that influence your siblings?
It was a huge impact on not only my siblings, but when I mentioned my father was one of 7. There are cousins that I still have yet to meet, and so we actually have family here as well, and throughout the United States and Mexico. It paved the way, but it was an interesting, different dynamic that my sisters had to face. So I'm the oldest son, and I have 2 younger sisters, and they had different challenges. My middle sister, I'm very proud of her. I was the person that kind of did everything by the books. My middle sister, she'd hate that I'm sharing this, but she was the one that would, forge my mother's signature to the field trip, or like participate in extracurriculars that my mom had no idea. So she was the rebel, but she also moved the needle forward in her respective way for the women in my family. And that was really, and I'm very excited and proud of her for having done that. When I went to school, it was difficult. I'll never forget the tears that my parents shed when they dropped me off. And I was recently talking to my mom about the tears that I shed when she dropped me off at kindergarten. And it's interesting how roles reverse in life. And with that, they were able to see the successes that came from going to school, from getting a college education. And so by the time that my sisters wanted to, they were excited to support, but they wanted them to be living at home. And so that was a completely different challenge that my sisters had to face. But they were able to navigate through that. My sister went to a school where she lived on campus. She got her rebel ways to move forward. But then that ultimately impacted the rest of our family. I have a number of cousins that were scared. They were scared to tell their parents that they were going to go to college. And when my parents did it, that opened the doors and opened conversations that maybe we wouldn't have had otherwise. But now it's exciting. When we have family gatherings, I think about us as kids, we were doing the things that I mentioned earlier. But now I have a chemist in the family, a nurse in the family, teachers. We have a number of different professionals. And my baby sister, my youngest sister, not a baby anymore, she's now working in the finance department of a township. And so she's working through the government sector as well. And that's exciting for me to see. So thank you.
I'm always too freaking short.
We have the opposite problem. I always have to, I'm always down here.
I have, anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm the right size.
You are. We are the.
I'm so bad.
I'm gonna have to steal that from you.
¿Verdad? First of all, muchas gracias. It's so nice to hear you. And you're absolutely right. Mothers are always right, no matter what. My
They are.
son, I have to brag, he always says, Mom, you're not always right. What makes you think you're always the right person? And I said, well, it says so in the Bible, So that's my comeback for him. Anyway, so I don't know if this is maybe a little bit too premature or whatever. So I listened to your story, and I can relate to so much of what you've said, so much. Having said that, there's still not enough Latinos or Hispanics in the in the political sector. I know that there's a few of us, and I'm so proud of my colleagues here. They're amazing, We've come a long way. But now, having said that, you're in a position right now that perhaps there might be something else in the future. Is there anything for you else in the future that we should be informed of, and perhaps maybe help each other? Because like you said, juntos. We can't do it by ourselves. Tenemos que ser juntos. What are your plans? Gracias.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And you never know what opportunities come before you in life. I would have never thought that I'd be standing here before you today in this capacity. And so it's an honor that you would think that. But I think it is important to elevate one another in our different realms. Again, if opportunities arise, I would most certainly consider that. At this point, I really appreciate the opportunity to serve in the governor's administration, but that's where we have to support one another. That's where we have to help one another out. When I talked to my parents about politics and government, at first it was hard for them to distinguish the two, and I wonder if you all have the same dynamic with parents. And I mentioned to them that in this role, I'm in the executive branch, I'm appointed, I'm kind of working in a government role, but then in the political sector, we have senators, we have representatives, we have mayors, councilmen, alder people, and the like. And we really have to help one another out in all three branches of government. I actually just received exciting news in Chicago yesterday, and that is there was the appointment of justices, and so there's a list of 44, and they narrowed it down to 22, and so there's the current already existing judges then do the narrowing down. And each year we get 1 Hispanic, 2 Hispanics, 1, 0. It's been pretty much fluctuating. So we had 4 Latinos in the 44. And so we were like, gosh, I hate the feeling of them competing against one another. I hate that feeling of them thinking that the past practice of having one be selected in the class of 22 is what we're gonna do. But they bonded together, they went to a number of different events together, they worked together, they lifted one another up, and yesterday I received the news that all 4 of them were selected. It was so exciting. 4 out of 22 isn't bad, but our infamous Supreme Court Justice RBG, when they asked her, when are you gonna be happy with how many women are on the Supreme Court, she's like, all of them, all the seats. We've lived our whole lives with all men in that role. So it would be exciting to see a different perspective, and I think it's important that we do the same with our Latino identity in helping one another out. So that was our exciting news, but I appreciate what you mentioned. It's important for us to support one another, and it's important for us to do it juntos. Gracias. Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time I had here with you today. I love Colorado, so it's exciting to be in this state. One of my other jobs that I had was a director of admissions for my undergrad. I went to undergrad at Washington University in St. Louis, so that's where I was recruiting individuals from, and I went to law school in Indiana, but I was director of admissions recruiting here in Colorado, so it's exciting to see the changes and the scenery, much less flat than Illinois and Chicago. So enjoy your time here, but thank you again. Thank you for having me.